Today, I'm going to talk about some of the struggles that we have living full time in an RV off grid while also riding dirt bikes a lot. This is the Solitude and Single Track podcast where we talk about our lives as off grid RV nomads traveling with our dirt bikes, our progression in the sport, all things moto, and other off grid related topics. I'm Zoe Anderson, your host on this podcast, and I live in a 14-foot travel trailer with my husband Taylor and my dog Mia. Currently, we're traveling the Pacific Northwest with our dirt bikes in search of solitude and some of the best single track in the country. So today we're going to talk about the struggles that we face. And by no means am I complaining about this life that we chose for ourselves because I frickin' love it. But sharing some of those challenges that we face and the solutions that we have for those challenges may help somebody who is considering doing a similar thing in the future. Most people, when they get home from a weekend of riding, they will unload their bikes, they'll wash their bikes, they'll take their clothes off, they'll wash their clothes, they'll go hop in the shower, clean everything up. We, as people who camp all the time, don't have those same luxuries. We get back from a ride and we just take our riding clothes off and we chill, and that sounds great, but we stink, and our clothes stink, and the bikes stink, and everything's dirty, and it's just dirty all the time. And that's not to say that we don't shower or don't have a shower, because we do have a shower and we do shower and we do clean ourselves. And that's a question we get asked a lot. How do we shower? Because if you know the trailer we have, it's an Intech Flyer Discover. They don't come with bathrooms. They don't come with a shower. They don't come with anything. They're a glorified cargo trailer. Ours is the largest and ours has a full kitchen, but it lacks a toilet and a shower. So how do we shower? Well, we took matters into our own hands and we built a shower. If you've seen pictures of my trailer, you've seen that it has a very large vertical black box on the tongue. That is the shower. It is an underbody mounted truck box mounted on its side, and it's not much bigger than a coffin. And using a truck box for an outdoor shower seems rather unconventional, but what I'm about to tell you is even more unconventional. If you've ever been to a car wash, you should know how a car wash works and how it recirculates the water that you just used. So you wash your car, it goes through filters, comes back out, and you keep using the same water over and over again to wash your car. That's kind of how our shower works. Our shower works on the same concept where we use 4 gallons of water that goes through a series of filters, including a UV sterilizing filter, and it just circulates over and over and over again. So we are able to shower on very, very little water for a very long time. We change it pretty often, but we only have to change it about once a week. So we have 4 gallons and that lasts us a week, which is typically 2 showers per person per week. So we get 4 showers out of 4 gallons of water. That's a gallon a shower. Sign me up. Sounds pretty good. So there are definitely pros and cons. And I know that sounds super, super gross, but again, like I said, we do have a sterilizing filter that kills all the bad, icky stuff out of there. However, it can start to get a little bit smelly depending on how smelly we were that week. So sometimes we change it a little bit more often than every 4 showers. Sometimes it's every 2 showers, and it just kind of depends on the circumstances that week. So there are, like I said, there's pros and cons. Some of the pros would be that we use very little water. And also we can shower for as long as we want with hot water for as long as we want. Like there is no fear of running out of water because the water is continually recirculating. Some of the cons would be the fact that I do have to change the water once a week. And when we change the water, we always check the filters. There are 3 filters that need to be changed and or checked. And most of the time we can get away with not changing the filters every single time. The first couple filters in line are the ones that usually need to be changed, and those need to be changed usually every other water change or once a month, depending on how dirty, icky we were in that time period. Another con would be the fact that we can't use soap because we use filters. The soap will gum up the filters and the water gets really gross a lot faster than if we didn't, because the filters kind of don't filter very well if they're all gummed up with soap, and also just the soap mildews in there, and it's just not good. It's not good for the filters. We have to change the filters more often, which really sucks. It gets expensive, so we have opted to not use soap at all. We scrub up with a good washcloth and give our skin a good scrubbing, and that's it. It's all we use. If we're really dirty, we do use soap outside of the shower, and then we just make sure to rinse it all off before we get in the shower. Maybe we'll suds up in the sink right beforehand, get our hair washed, get it rinsed, and then hop in the shower to wash the rest of our body. Another con is our I almost said it. I said hot water heater in a video once and everybody lost their fucking minds, so I'm not going to say that again. The other issue is our water heater. It is a cheap Amazon water heater that doesn't control its temperature very well. So since the water is continuously circulating through the water heater, it's continuously heating it, and it doesn't keep it at a specific temperature for long. So once it gets to about 100 degrees is when it starts to creep up faster and faster, and then once it reaches 113, 114, it's just too hot to shower anymore, so you have to get out and let it cool off, or finagle at the settings, whatever. I just get out of the shower at that point. That's when I know I should be done. So those are the pros and cons of our loop shower. And honestly, in the summer, it's not so bad because if we are by a water source like a stream or a river, we can just go jump in the water. Like this last summer, we were camped next to a creek. And so I'd go on a ride on a hot day. I'd come back all hot and sweaty. I'd take off my clothes and I'd go for a swim in the creek and wash up. And it was great. And I could rinse my clothes off and hang them up to dry. And it was perfect. In the winter, not so perfect, because not only is it cold, and while I'm not opposed to a polar plunge every once in a while, I'm not going to do that every single day, it's also raining and a lot harder to dry your clothes. So since our clothes were getting super muddy, we couldn't wash them as easily. I mean, we could wash them in the creek, but then how are they going to dry? It's raining. And we battle moisture in an RV already. If you've ever been in an RV, you would know that moisture inside is always a problem. So to avoid bringing more moisture into the trailer, what we would do on the soggy, nasty days that we got nasty, muddy riding clothes is we would just put them in the tent where our bikes lived, and we'd let them dry out, and then we'd be able to brush the mud off and then bring them back in the trailer once they were mostly dry. Because the more we could avoid bringing wet things into the trailer, the easier it is to keep everything dry. So that brings me to my next issue that we struggle with, which would be moisture in the trailer, which is a real big problem in the Pacific Northwest in the winter. And it's not so much an issue in like the dead of winter where it's cold and raining, because honestly it's a lot easier to keep it dry when we have a wood stove, because we can run the wood stove all the time and it's not disgustingly hot inside. But in these transitional periods, like between fall and winter to spring, where it's like 60 degrees and raining and it's doing that for like weeks straight, that's when it becomes just a little bit of a problem. We can run the wood stove, but it gets really, really hot, and it's hard to keep the wood stove running when it's 100 degrees in there. And we can keep the windows and doors open, but it's kind of eliminating the process, or it's kind of defeating the purpose of getting the moisture out when you're letting moisture back in. So that's what really sucks. And we have battled moisture in the past, and the wood stove has been so far the best thing to eliminate moisture. And a lot of people use dehumidifiers in their RVs to keep the moisture down, but we just don't have enough solar or power to be able to run our dehumidifier for as long as we would need to. So the wood stove is what we use to get rid of the moisture. Since moisture is a problem, we try to do things that would help not trap as much in certain areas. So something that we have to be mindful of is when we place things on the floor, we have to make sure there's good airflow from the bottom, because if it sits there and it collects moisture, then it can potentially rot the wood underneath the flooring. We have that rubber coin flooring, but it does eventually absorb that water, and then the wood will get wet. And we actually have a spot in the trailer where the wood's dimpled from something being set on it and moisture collecting. The wood is fine, the floors are fine, but there's just a little bit of ugly dimpling from some moisture damage. Because when we first decided on doing this, our plan was to travel based on the season. We didn't want to be in Oregon and Washington in the winter and fall and spring. We only wanted to be here like in the summer and late spring where it's nice and it's dry, and then maybe go down south or go to Eastern Oregon for some of the wetter climate or some of the wetter seasons where it's drier somewhere else. And unfortunately, life has other plans, and we are here for a while now. But that's fine. It's not upsetting or anything to us. We have some jobs that aren't remote, and we'd like to keep those jobs for a little while, so we're here. And we're still living our lives that we want to live, and we're living them the way that we want to live them, and that's all that matters. Sometimes things aren't ideal, but you make it work and you figure it out anyways. So I mentioned that our trailer does not have a bathroom because it doesn't have a shower. It also doesn't have a toilet. So we have purchased a cassette toilet. Our cassette toilet of choice is a Thetford Porta Potty Curve, where it's the same height and relative shape of a normal conventional toilet, so it's super comfy for a toilet. However, we don't use it for number twos. It's a number one toilet only, so I have no idea why I even bothered getting a curved styled porta potty toilet. And also it has a 5-gallon tank for black water and then a 4-gallon tank for fresh water, which is kind of nice, so we can go about a week before we need to empty it. Again, just on number ones, no number twos. The pros and cons of this one. Pros are that the fact that it's a cassette toilet, I can take it apart and I can dump it wherever I need to. And that would be in like a vault toilet or a black tank dump, or even if I wanted to go into a 7-Eleven and dump it in their bathroom, I could do that. I could put it in a regular toilet. Somebody might look at me funny or say something, but I can do that if I needed to. The cons is that it's 5 gallons and it's heavy as fuck, and I have a really hard time carrying 5 gallons of pee water and trying to dump it because it's kind of awkward to carry and it's awkward to dump. And it's actually happened to me where I was dumping in a vault toilet once and I didn't have the lid all the way up and the lid came crashing down midstream and I got wastewater all over the ground. And so I had to clean a vault toilet because I was too embarrassed to just, leave 2 gallons of pee water all over the floor. I'm not that person. I'm not going to do that. And then actually one of the issues that we're having right now is our toilet's about 2 years old and it's been used as a normal toilet and they're not really meant to be used as a normal toilet. So it has a little seal around the valve that's between the top portion of the toilet and the bottom portion. And sometimes if there's a little bit of pressure built up in the bottom part of the tank and you have just used the top and the bowl is full of waste and you go to flush it, the pressure builds up from the bottom and it kind of sprays the top bowl fluids in between the two and it can leak out the side. So that's been an issue that we've been battling, but I found as long as we vent the bottom first every time no matter what and then use and fill the top portion and then flush it again, that's where I've avoided the issue. I think after doing some research, it's just that round seal that's sealing the valve itself that I need to replace. So I bought one. They're only like $20 from Thetford. I just haven't had the courage or thick enough gloves to want to replace it yet. So I will update you when I replace it, and hopefully that's what fixes my toilet. If not, I'm going to have to spend another $100 on a new toilet. And if I do have to buy a new toilet, I'm not going to get the 5-gallon version. I'm getting a smaller one. So if you have followed our YouTube channel at all, in the last year, we have changed the setup of our trailer, I think 4 times, maybe more, maybe less. I'm not sure. We've changed it a lot, though, and that's because we just haven't figured out a way that it's going to work for us. And the way we have it set up right now is we have a bed on the floor that can roll up and it turns into a couch if we want it to, kind of like a futon, and it rolls up the wall into a couch. And it works, but it's not ideal because we lose a lot of floor space with the bed on the ground like that. So we're looking into better ways to utilize our entire trailer than what we have set up right now. And our trailer is meant to be used as a hybrid trailer. So it's got 2 tip-out sides on each side. It's got 1 tip-out on each side that pop down and they have canvas tents on them, kind of like, those pop-up trailers. We got rid of those about a year ago because they just didn't make sense for us. That's, number 1, not very secure. And number 2, really hard to maintain moisture and temperature control with the tents because canvas is not really got any sort of insulating qualities about to it. So we completely removed the canvas and we just have it all closed up. Now, we've actually lived with it all closed up for the better part of us owning the trailer for the past 2 years, but we just left the canvases on. Finally, we took them off because it gives us an extra 6 inches on each side of the trailer for room, not having the canvases right there. So we don't have them anymore, but we've been talking about possibly building some hard side shells to go on top of them instead, something that can fold up and we can just set those up. That way we have twice as much floor space as we have right now. Probably more than twice because we really don't have much floor space. That would open up the trailer like it was intended to be used. And then also we would have some not only extra living space, but we could essentially have a quote-unquote spare room if we ever had company stay over and they didn't have to stay in a tent outside, which is what we were doing before. Every time somebody would come over, they'd bring a tent or they'd sleep in our tent that we had for the bikes. So we're looking into different ways to use our trailer, and somebody might be thinking right now, well, why wouldn't you just buy a different trailer? Well, I don't know about you, but I am not made of money and I don't have money for a new trailer. Plus, we've spent all of this time and effort into customizing this trailer for ourselves or what works for us, and even though it doesn't work 100% for us right now, we're pretty confident that we can make it work for us. Also, I don't want to get a bigger trailer because then we wouldn't be able to haul the trailer into some of the places that we get this one. This one's only 14 feet. It's tiny. It's tall. It's kind of a wind sail, but it's short, and we can back it up into spots really easily, and we can get it up we've gotten it up ATV trails before. I mean, it goes anywhere. You're not going to do that with a 40-foot toy hauler. So we're going to keep the trailer. We're going to figure out more things. We do want to get a cargo trailer. We're still looking for a cargo trailer. Rather, we're saving up money and needing to buy a cargo trailer. So one of these days, we'll have that and the Intech because we have 2 tow-capable vehicles that are each going to be pulling a trailer. And I guess to some people that sounds really strange, especially when we own a toy hauler. But if you've ever lived in like a moto van, I'm just going to use a moto van because that's the closest thing I can think of to our trailer, or a cargo trailer that doesn't have a separate, front space for living and is all like one big garage. It's kind of a pain in the ass to live in the same living space as your motorcycles. That's why we have the tent, so we have a dry space to put the motorcycles. It's not comfortable to sleep with a motorcycle in the middle of the room. It's not safe to sleep with a motorcycle in the middle of the room because of fumes from the gases and everything. It's just a pain. It's a pain to have to share your living space with a motorcycle, or 4 in our case. So that's why we're getting a cargo trailer, so we can eliminate having to use this as a toy hauler at all and just use it for living space. All right, so that's about all the time I have for today, but I thank you all so much for listening and continuing to follow me on my podcast journey, which is brand new to me. Next week, I'm going to talk about this last trial that we just did. Taylor and I both competed in a trial, and I screwed up real bad, and I had a really, really bad time. And I just want to talk about it because mentality is everything. Attitude is everything, honestly. And this was a prime example of that. So tune in next time for talking about trials and the trial of your mind and being able to control your mentality on certain and bad situations. So anyways, thank you guys for listening. And if you haven't already, go ahead and give us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, or Spotify, or wherever else you listen to this podcast from. I would really appreciate it, and it would help me get my podcast out there to more people. Anyways, that's it for now. See you next time.